Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and very welcome to this webinar. My name is Malin Lundberg Ingemarsson. I am a program manager at SIWI, Swedish Waterhouse, and at the Water for Resilient Landscape team. And I am super excited about today's webinar, where we will look into links between water and agriculture and climate. And at SIWI, we usually say that climate change is experienced through water first. So whoever you are, wherever you live on Earth, first time you will experience climate change will be through water. Either it's too much water, as the big floods that we have experienced in several parts of the world last year or this year, or too little water. There has also been extensive droughts. Or too dirty water. And all of this is, of course, also affecting agriculture. At the same time, it's also possible to impact climate change through sustainable land and water management. And this is a bit of what we will hear more about now. The webinar will be recorded, or it is in recording now. So it will also be available afterwards if you want to see it again or share it. Let's move to the next slide and look at the agenda for today. So what we have today is 3 presentations, and then in the end we have a panel discussion. But it's possible for you to post your questions to the speakers throughout the whole webinar. So if there is a question that you think of, just post it in the chat and also address it to the person you want to ask the question. With that, I will hand over to my colleague Anna Tengberg. She's Senior Advisor at SIWI Swedish Waterhouse and also part of the landscape team where I work. She's also an adjunct professor at Lund University Center for Sustainability Studies. And today she will give an introductory overview and explaining why it is necessary to adopt water-wise solutions in agricultural management. Please, Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Malin. Yes, and I will try to address this question. Why is it necessary to adopt water-wise solutions in agriculture? Next, please. Yeah, so the background is given, I think, in FAO's the State of Food and Agriculture report from 2020 that focused on overcoming water challenges in agriculture. And this was the first time that this annual report looked at water since 1993. And it was found that the water challenges more or less remained the same. Which means that water scarcity and water quality issues are increasingly threatening food security and nutrition. A lot of people are affected. More than 3 billion people live in agriculture areas with high to very high levels of water shortages or scarcity. And more than 1 billion people live in severely water constrained areas. Around 11% of rain-fed cropland and 14% of pasture land experience severe recurring droughts, while more than 60% of irrigated cropland is severely water stressed. And of course, climate change is exacerbating all these water-related challenges in agriculture areas. Next, please. Agricultural landscapes also provide important water ecosystem services, not only for agriculture. And these landscapes experience pressures from changing populations in many areas in the world, changes in harvest and resource consumption and changing diets globally, and changes in land use and cover and climate change. All this affects the hydrological cycle and the hydrology of landscapes, which in turn affect the water-related ecosystem services, which include provision of clean water, both for agriculture and other uses, regulation of water supplies, culture water services, for example, for recreation, and services supporting the hydrological cycle. all this affects our ability to achieve the sustainable development goals underpinned by water, and also to reach the commitments of the multilateral environmental agreements, not least the climate change agreement. Next, please. And one of the main drivers of loss of ecosystem services, including water services, is loss of land cover and land use change. And here is an example from the Central Rift Valley in Ethiopia, where you can see changes in land use and cover over almost a 50-year period, loss of grasslands, forests, and development of more agriculture and bare land. And we translated this into ecosystem services values. And although agriculture areas have expanded, the ecosystem services values for food provision have only increased marginally, while we can see that water provision has been very negatively affected in the table here. Further down, we can also see that the regulation of water flows have been negatively affected. And of course, this is very serious when it comes to the resilience of landscapes to climate change. Next, please. And there are large parts of the world affected by this. This is an example of the Sahelian zone in Africa, stretching all the way from Ethiopia in the east to Senegal in the west, where many projects and programs have been supporting the implementation of water efficient and resilient land use practices to enhance the resilience of these landscapes. And this has included things like agroforestry, pasture and crop management, water management. But it's also important to note that you can see, as you can see in the figure here, that there are also other factors affecting the success of these programs, not only the practices on the ground. It is things related to knowledge management and awareness raising, monitoring, evaluation, and also issues related to the governance and institutional environment in these countries. And it's important to support strengthening of policy and regulatory frameworks, etc. This is based on an analysis of projects over a long period of time. Next, please. If we look at the practices then themselves that can enhance water productivity of these agriculture areas, it's important to first develop an understanding of the landscape itself and the landscape transformation pathways, and then identify different technology options, such as water harvesting, for example, but it can also be related to water lifting, as you can see on this manual here, using solar cells for water pumping, and then ensuring that there are also the right governance arrangements in place. Next, please. It's also important to consider the trade-offs in the landscape between agricultural productivity and other ecosystem services. And here is an example of different tools available to look at these trade-offs between agriculture and water, biodiversity, as well as other services. But in general, there is a lack of this kind of tools that are available for practical use in the field. So there is a need to bring together farmers, extension workers, scientists, etc., to work on this together. Next, please. Yeah, this is an example from the World Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies that has mapped different soil and water conservation practices around the world. Here we see practices implemented across the world in the map. And an analysis of their impact on land cover and greening in remote sensing has shown that many of them has very positive. So there are a lot of good practices going on around the world and local solutions that need to be scaled up. Next, please. I'm coming towards the end here. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, it's also important to combine these good practices with strengthening of the enabling environment. Coming back to the FAO SOFA report, we can see different policy priorities here for improved water management in agriculture. Priorities include everything from water accounting and auditing to development of different policy instruments, financial services, information and communication technology, etc. Next, please. Yeah, so if we manage to make agriculture more water-wise by combining good practices on the ground with the strengthened enabling environment, agriculture that is resilient can contribute to all these sustainable development goals you see here. Everything from no poverty, zero hunger, to climate action, life on land, etc. So this is what we are striving for. And I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Very interesting and good to point out that there is both two solutions on the ground now, but that we also need more tools to be even more, doing more progress. Okay, we will then move on to the next presentation. Now introducing Monica Enderito. She is a regional environment and climate change advisor at Vi Agroforestry, what we in Sweden are more familiar as Vi Skogen. And she will explain in what ways agroforestry is a water smart approach to farming. But before that, we will start with a short video from Vi Agroforestry, giving one practical example of soil and water conservation, namely terracing. Please play the video.
Actually don't know what the problem is because it worked yesterday.
Now it works.
Soil conservation is the prevention or reduction of soil loss or reduced soil fertility caused by water and wind damage, acidification, or other chemical soil contamination. On the other hand, water conservation is the use and management of water for the good of all consumers. It is the effort to reduce the demand for water, improve the efficiency of its use, and reduce waste. Effective soil and water management practices can improve soil fertility and increase yields in a sustainable way. Terracing. As most farmers doing farming in hilly areas have experienced, when it rains, most of the rainwater flows down the hills fast, taking away fertile topsoil and with time reduces productivity of the farmland. Since all the rainwater runs off down the hill, farmers end up not making good use of the much needed water for farming. It is important to find ways to preserve as much water as possible instead of it being lost or wasted as runoff. Terracing is one of the techniques that can be used for soil and water conservation. It is done by making or forming a number of flat areas across a hilly or steep land, resembling a series of steps. It is done to prevent water from rainwater running off down the hill, causing serious soil erosion as the terraces slow the speed of water. This allows the water that has been slowed down to slowly seep into the soil, therefore improving the soil for the vegetation. Types of terraces. There are several types of bench terraces.
Thank you. I think I'll take over, and thank you for playing the video. As you can see from the presentation through the video, you've seen that we have several types of or practices that we use for soil and water conservation. You've just seen a tip of that. There are so many others, and from here I'll present a project that we had, a transboundary project that we called SEMA, that we implemented through partners to restore agricultural land through sustainable land management practices and livelihood improvement and other practical technologies. Let's go on, Malin. So I'll start by talking about VI. It is an organization, a Swedish organization that fights poverty and climate change together. We are based in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, in the East African region, and with the hope of even expanding more to the rest of Africa or the world. We continue, Malin. Sustainable agricultural land management practices based on agroforestry are our core working areas, as you'll see from, you've seen already from the video, and you'll see from here on with the next, with the project as we continue to present. Next, Malin. So when we talk about agroforestry, this is planting of trees alongside crops and livestock on the same farmland. And from this slide, you can see the benefits that we derive from agroforestry, including the cleaning of air, supply of products such as firewood, building materials. It is also a practice that helps to improve the soil fertility. It is also provides food and medicine for the local communities, feed for animals through the fodder shrubs and trees that we grow. So it's a whole lot of benefits that we derive from agroforestry. Move on, Marlene. So when we come to the Initiative for Conservation of Mara Serengeti Ecosystem, you can be moving on to the next one. Our project is a project that was implemented in the transboundary area of Kenya and Tanzania. Normally in this area, we have a lot of issues, including climate change, land use change. We have wildlife human conflict that is always coming up. And this project was aimed at supporting the local communities, the stakeholders, including the governments in the area, to work together collaboratively so that they can be able to improve people's livelihoods and as well to curb the wildlife human conflict in the area. So the purpose was to empower the local communities and stakeholders to be able to conserve the Mara Serengeti ecosystem, to promote sustainable livelihoods for the communities and promote dialogue among the community and the law enforcers. We move on. This is the area. The Mara Serengeti ecosystem it runs through Tanzania and Kenya. I know maybe some of you have heard about the 7th wonder of the world, which is the wild beast migration. And this is the area where this project was based in. Move on. So when we talk about agroforestry, in all our projects, not only this one, we have best practices or good practices in soil and water conservation. There are others that support nutrient management and so on and so forth. But agroforestry is the key. So in everything that VI agroforestry does, we center it around tree planting and tree growing. So these are some of the pictures from the SEMA project. From the left up there, you can see a nursery of Grevillea trees. Next, you see a fruit nursery, fruit seedlings nursery. The project also had something to do with aquaculture, which is also part of agroforestry. And you see Grevillea trees being planted on the top, bottom right. Move on. So when we talk about agroforestry, we have the various agroforestry systems, the woodlot, the dispersed intercropping, where you intercrop the agroforestry trees together with the food crops. On the left top there, you see that there are some trees planted together with cassava, and this is a common thing that we do because we believe that tree planting supports the soils, and at the same time it supports in retention of the water in the system, so that the crops are able to gain from the retained water slowly, instead of just running down the hill and getting lost into the seas or the ocean and causing siltation in the rivers. The woodlot is where mostly we have it done in bare land where it is not so productive. For example, in the hilly areas or rocky areas, it is identified and tree species are matched to the site, and a woodlot is developed in such areas. We also have fruit orchards together with the kitchen garden mixed together, and beekeeping as a nature-based solution. Next. Marlene, I'll move very fast. I see you. Next, Marlene. So these are just some of the successful restoration solutions. I'll not talk much about that. You can see the coriander somewhere on the left bottom. You see the fruits of planting fruit trees from the avocado that man is showing there. Next. So the reason why we practice sun based on agroforestry is because it supports our farmers, smallholder farmers, to adapt to climate change. It is also a way of mitigating, because we know the role of trees in the ecosystem with the carbon sequestration. It also helps in biodiversity conservation and enhancing the productivity of the land, therefore increasing or improving the food and nutritional security of the area, and not least to reverse degradation. Next. I'm almost done. So in this project, we were able to reach out to over 6,000 smallholder farmers who engaged in sustainable enterprises, and over 24,000 hectares of land were rehabilitated and planted with trees, and other benefits included the improved food and nutritional security. Next, Marlene. So the lessons learned is that we need to continue involving the community so that they can be able to own the process of restoration. Alternative livelihoods are also important if you want to deal with restoration issues, and enhancing networking and collaboration, both from the stakeholders, farmers, and even the government. Next. Thank you. I hope I was not so fast.
Thank you so much, Monica. Very interesting to see this project in Eastern Africa. Now moving on to introducing Tette Ahlström, a physical geographer working on local water planning in agricultural areas at Ekologigruppen. And she will explain how irrigation wetlands can strengthen the resilience of Swedish agricultural landscapes. Please, Tette. You are muted. Let's unmute, please. Now.
Okay.
Yep.
Now it's okay. I see the slideshow very small on my video. Anyway, how can I will try to answer the question, how can irrigated wetlands strengthen the resilience of the Swedish agricultural landscape? This is a quite complex question, but I will try to pinpoint some both benefits and obstacles to reach these measures in the landscape. Next, please. And here you see one of the farmers that I've been working with in the south of Sweden. Even in Sweden, we have a lack of water, not during the year, but during the crop periods. And this was very obvious during the summer of 2018. And since then, we have seen very fast interest and increasing interest of wetlands for irrigation among the farmers. And I'm sorry, but I can't see what's on the... There we go. Okay. Sorry for that. So even in Sweden, we need irrigation systems and secure the water in the landscape. for the same reasons as in Africa, to, of course, secure plant growth, but also secure thereby the nutrient uptake in the crops, and thereby sustainable use of the fertilizers put on the ground, which also enables a decrease of nutrient leakage from the irrigated fields. Next, please. But of course, the water in the irrigated wetlands also gives other ecosystem services as the surface waters enters these water bodies. By sedimentation, the phosphorus is the phosphor, one of the big nutrients, are bound to the particles, and they sediment in the wetlands. And the other important nutrient, nitrogen, is transformed from nitrogen bound to the water up into the air to nitrogen gas by the process of denitrification. Next, please. But if you construct these wetlands in a good way, you can also store water during the high flow periods. So you can save it for the low flow periods for irrigation. So you get a double effect there. Next, please. And of course, whenever you accomplish a new water body in the landscape, you also get the animals bound to the water in this wetland. And if you construct the irrigated wetland, which of course loses its water during the irrigation season, but if you construct it so that you can keep the water for these different species, you can also provide biodiversity within these wetlands. Next, please. So this is just a scenery from different irrigation ponds or wetlands newly constructed in the south of Sweden. And of course, they also add a very nice view to the landscape and a differentiation of the arable lands. Next, please. So what are the conditions for this implementation in the Swedish landscape? You can take the next. Well, there is a cost due to this when you construct these wetlands, and this is due to lowered water levels in the agriculture landscape. I will come back to that, but first you can look at these pie charts. There are examples of costs from 3 different newly constructed wetlands. And the blue part of the pie chart is the cost for digging, excavation of soil to get these volumes of storage of water. So this is the biggest cost for creating these wetlands. And this is due to that in the end of the 19th century, people were starving in Sweden due to lack of arable land. So a lot of arable land were drained and the surface water levels were lowered. So now it's like 1 meter's difference from the end of the 19th century until now when you need to reach the water. So first you have to dig down to the level of the surface water. That's why. And we can't go back to the old landscape because then we risk to destroy the drainage system of the agriculture land we have today. So we're stuck with this new water landscape for constructing new water bodies in the landscape. Next. And another limiting factor is the limited amount of cost-effective places to find these places where surface water is near to the ground. And it also needs to be incorporated into the farmland, and the farmer wants its land for crop production, of course, but there are also other interests in the landscape like infrastructure and growing cities and also nature conservation areas for rare species and biotops which can't be destroyed, what you say, by by new wetlands and digging out the soil. Next, please. So what we need in Sweden, as well as in Africa, is a smart planning and cooperation concerning the water, both during the low flow periods and the high flow periods. And this has to be done within the borders of catchment areas, like on this picture. And it's essential to get the stakeholders to work together, both to secure water during low periods and to try to hinder the damages during high flow periods. So next, please. My conclusions from this are, next, please. That irrigation wetlands are, of course, essential in Sweden also to ensure a stable harvest, both now and of course in the future. It will be an insurance and an investment for the farmers and their companies. It can help to lower impact of flooding, and it will also lower the problem with nutrient leakage to streams and rivers and seas. And constructed in the right way, promote biodiversity to the agriculture landscape. Next, please. Smart implementation needs, though, common strategies and teamwork between different stakeholders to ensure that there is enough water on a catchment scale to decrease flooding problems and to avoid conflicts regarding water issues, and to reserve cost-effective places for water on a planning scale, not only irrigation wetlands, but other things too. You know, in Sweden, we are not so used to having to plan and secure our water. So this is new for us and we need to start working with it. Next, please. So what do I see as the needs for the nearby future? Well, I think the most important thing is that we build stable organizations on the local scale with catchments as a geographic border. And in Sweden, we have these kind of organizations in the water councils. They are called vattenråd. But they're not established all through the agriculture landscape because they don't get directly supported by the national or regional part. They really need more economical and national and regional support. But there are good examples. And I've been working with one of these water councils that is one of the oldest in Sweden for like 25 years. So I know it can work, but it really needs more support to get this going. And also to involve different kind of stakeholders. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you. Next, please.
Thank you so much, Tete. I agree. We at SeaWe also work a lot with involving many stakeholders to create progress in projects. Okay, we now have time for some questions. As of now, there are no questions in the chat. So in the meantime, I have a question for Tete and Monica first. In what ways do dialogues with farmers and landowners aid the implementation of water smart solutions in agriculture? And what is needed for these dialogues to be fruitful?
Do you want to start, Monica, or?
It's okay. I can start by saying that dialogues with the smallholder farmers for our case is very important because one, we need to understand, remember someone said that we need to understand the issues on the ground, which the best people to give that information or to share the experiences are the farmers themselves. So it gives us an opportunity to co-share knowledge and as well have the farmers participate in the process so that it doesn't look like you come in with interventions from the outside, but it should come out from within the system. So for us, we'd say that that helps us to leverage on the farmers' experiences and also to join science and indigenous knowledge together to come up with a better intervention for the problems that they could be going through.
Yes, I really recognize things that you say, because we've also worked in the same way in Sweden. And as I usually say, it's really a mutual process, because I, as a consultant and knowing about the processes in the landscape and how you can and have the measures that I want to serve with, I've learned a lot from the farmers in these dialogues, what they have as an ordinary day work and what are their limits for production and so on. And it gives, I mean, if you have these dialogues where you listen to each other and learn from each other, it also gives a trust and an understanding why we should do these measures, both in the short term, but also in the long term, and not only for the specific farmer's land, but also for the whole catchment area. So this is a very good way of reaching and being able to establish these measurements. And there is a bigger and bigger interest in Sweden as we are getting a lack of water and also a problem with the flooding. So yes, we work in the same way and have the same needs, although different languages and different landscapes.
Thanks so much, both. There is a comment in the chat. It's from Lotta Samuelsson. She thanks for the nice pictures, Monica, and she asks about the importance of trees for soil moisture and groundwater recharge, as well as evapotranspiration and also cloud formation and precipitation downwind. So is this something, when you plant trees in the agroforestry projects, are you also caring for these bigger ecosystem services that are like on a bigger scale maybe?
Yes, I would say yes. It's part of probably the space of the drawing is too small to put like every ecosystem service that we derive from that. But this is one of the contribution, the global contribution that the smallholder farmers have to climate mitigation. So it is in that view that once the trees are planted, we have the ability to maintain the aquifer, to have all this evaporation and the system of precipitation going on, hence helping the environment. So thank you, Lotta. We'll see how to squeeze that in.
A challenge for the people illustrating those nice pictures, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I have a question for you, Anna. What adaptation measures to water management in agriculture will be needed due to climate change effects?
Oh, that was a challenging question. I think in these dryland areas I showed from Africa, because of course, I mean, the impact of climate change differs, you know, in different parts of the world. Some parts will get more affected by droughts, which I think the landscapes I showed will, others by flooding, and others actually by both. So I think there could be many different types of adaptation measures, both on the ground measures that will improve infiltration. That could be planting of trees, you know, in the landscape. But it's important to have the right kind of spacing of trees. A lot of research on that, especially in drylands. It could also be nature-based solutions of other kinds, terraces, you know, all kinds of things to improve infiltration. That will both address, I mean, the water storage in the soil, but also reduce, you know, risk of flooding. But other adaptation measures are more related to, I think, planning and preparedness also. Yeah, so maybe planting cycles or agriculture calendars need to be updated to address climate change issues. And also there could be changes of crop varieties to more drought or flood resistant species. Yeah, so these are just a few examples.
Yes, it's important with all these long-term perspectives when you do the planning to also plan for future climate changes.
Yeah, and early warning systems also.
True. Yeah, very true. Thank you. Another question, which could be to all three of you. Are there any knowledge gaps in this work? And what is needed to fill those gaps? I know that when we spoke a few days ago, you said that maybe not knowledge gaps, but other gaps. Please refresh my memory.
First, I would like to say that I get very inspired by Monica, because I see that, I mean, you've been having a fight with this drought and too much rain problem for such a long time. So I think Sweden and the northern countries has a lot to learn about how you coped with that in different ways. And that I think we need to transform to Swedish agricultural landscape. But also what I see, I don't think we have a problem with what to do. Like there are many examples, for instance, from Africa, how to work with the landscape. But what we need is highlighting that we really have a problem with this in Sweden, and to get this knowledge out into the municipality planning, into the regional planning, and to get a better cooperation on the national scale, and most of all, financing and help to build organizations for bringing the stakeholders together within catchment areas. It's not natural borders for planning in Sweden. Of course, there are other kind of borders. So I think this is the most important issue right now, to get the organizations going and to get dialogues between different stakeholders.
Thanks.
Yeah, maybe I can come in and just say that one of the challenges, as Tete is saying, that you don't have a challenge with, or you don't have a shortage of what to do, but it's also good to note that innovations are really coming up around the world, and sometimes the uptake of these innovations from our perspective is a little bit slow. Sometimes it's because we feel, maybe for example, if I gave an example of maybe you want to use a solar pump for water, for your irrigation, accessing this system is sometimes a cost for our farmers who are smallholder farmers and might not be having enough of money to buy some of these technologies. There is also the issue of extension services. That is also an issue. Normally it is supposed to be given by the government, but you realize that of late, the governments in the region have slowed down on this. And therefore, it still becomes a challenge on how these farmers are getting this information or support to be able to uptake these innovations. Thank you.
Very true, very true. Thank you. We have reached the end time of this webinar. Malin, my colleague Malin, I know you want to say a few words, and Anna has her raised hand. Does Anna have a minute to speak before the closing?
Go ahead, Anna.
Okay, yeah, I think it's in relation to challenges and innovations, and we got a comment here in the chat about finance. So I think that is also a challenge we need to address, to improve smallholder farmers' access to finance to invest in more resilient and sustainable agriculture. For example, for solar-driven pumps and things like that, and other types of innovations. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Malin and the speakers for today, and thank you to all the listeners in the audience. I'll just close up with a few words about this webinar series that Swedish Waterhouse had in November. We had 3 different webinars that focused on different aspects of freshwater challenges and solutions. And in the 2 previous webinars, we discussed a source to sea approach for holistic water management and what urban water resilience means. And today we listen to some very interesting examples of how we can strengthen climate resilience in agricultural landscapes. And we've heard some great solutions to how we can better manage our common waters. And while there's more to explore and investigate, we also have tools in place and examples to learn from when we move forward. So we can all bring that with us. And I would just like to close this webinar by inviting you to follow our newsletter, which you can do by scanning this QR code. And you can also find this on the CV website. Yes. So with that being said, have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you soon.
Thanks
Bye.
so much, Oa. Thanks so much.